Once upon a time, in a remote, cozy house on the outskirts of a big city, lived a mother and her son. Since childhood, he had been naughty. He ignored her requests, broke things, argued and laughed at her worries. It seemed that no amount of entreaties, punishments, or explanations could change his stubborn soul. But this mother had one secret. Her distant great-grandmothers had bequeathed her knowledge of an ancient power, the ability to control the size of things and creatures. Her own mother had warned, "Never use force and anger, but remember, sometimes small lessons mend big hearts." One day, when her mother's patience was at its limit, after another argument, yelling, and hurtful words, she decided it was time to teach her son a lesson he would not forget. She approached him calmly as he sat on the couch, leaning back defiantly. At first, the boy noticed only a slight, strange glow in the air. Then, the room began to seem huge. The couch began to seem like a hill, the floor a field, and his mother's figure a towering giant. In a flash, it was no bigger than the palm of his hand. The huge, commanding figure of the mother loomed over him. She bowed. Her eyes, which had previously glowed with weariness, now shone with stern determination. "Since you're acting like a cranky little boy," she spoke softly, "you should look at the world through the eyes of those you don't notice." At first, the son tried to scream and protest, but his voice was a thin squeak in the huge room. His mother only grinned softly and gently picked him up with 2 fingers. To her, he was nothing more than a toy now. She set him on the table and deliberately left huge objects nearby. A heavy mug as tall as a tower, a stack of books that seemed like mountains, and a draft blew in like a storm. In the hours that followed, his mother played with him as he had once played with the feelings of those around him. She put obstacles in front of him. She told him to crawl over the edge of the table, to jump over cracks in the wood, to climb up the rough bindings of books. Sometimes she just watched quietly, and sometimes with a soft touch, she pushed him forward if he was slow. "Now you know what it's like to be small and defenseless when someone stronger is around," she said with a gentle but stern intonation. When he grew tired and began to tremble with fear, his mother would gently place him in her warm palm and rock him slowly as if he were a cradle. But there was no pity in her voice, only determination to see the lesson through. A few hours passed, or perhaps a whole day. Time seemed endless to the tiny boy. He felt for the first time in his life what it was like to be dependent, how easy it was to hurt without even wanting to. He remembered how many times he had laughed at other people's pain and at his mother's tears. When she finally returned him to his former size, the boy was no longer the man he had been before. He stood before her, trembling and crying, with eyes full of realization and remorse. Without a word, his mother embraced him, and in that hug was everything. Forgiveness, love, and a quiet faith that sometimes the hardest lessons lead to the deepest changes. From then on, he never allowed himself to be rude or indifferent again. He remembered not the fear of diminishment, but the realization of how easy it is to hurt, break, or offend those who are smaller and weaker.